Hi guys! Today I'm going to share with you how I get super sharp, highly detailed, handheld macro shots with a zoom lens. Got my zoom lens here and I have my list of tips and information on how you can do this too. So I know I promised you this video 2 weeks ago and I really apologize, but I've been working and then I got sick. So unfortunately, it's taken a little longer than I wanted to be able to share with you. However, things are back on track now, and so we're gonna jump right in. So first, let's think about what some of the subjects are that we wanna catch with really close up, zoomed in framing. So I like to capture insects, I like to capture the details in a flower, I like to capture just colors and textures, anything that you want to get really close up to. And it's amazing because you can get a whole new world of beauty and images that you never ever knew were there. But it's very important to be able to get a sharp, focused image, because otherwise the whole presentation will just lose its effect. So the first thing that I want to tell you is that you have to make sure that you are capturing things very quickly. So your shutter speed needs to be super fast. Most of the time your subject is going to be moving. Sometimes it won't be, because you might have set up, say, a piece of, I don't know, a flower or a pine cone or something inside in a controlled environment. But what I'm talking about in this video is capturing things that are moving and that are outdoors, and that, you know, maybe a butterfly that has come by, or there's some flowers that are just slightly swaying in the breeze. They're going to be moving subjects and you need to have a super fast shutter speed. Now to do this, a few things have to come together. You need to have a high enough ISO to allow your shutter speed to be fast enough to capture your subject. Some people will tell you, you know, never go above 400, never go above 800. When I take images that are handheld macro, I will tell you that I personally will go up very high in my ISO. I want to capture the image. It doesn't matter to me if I don't have the highest quality at 100 ISO. I would rather capture the image, and to be honest, I know that I can still capture a good quality image with, say, ISO, I don't know, high. So I would go up to 400. If that doesn't work, I'm at 800, then I'm at 1200, and I will keep going up. I don't normally get past, say, you know, 2000 or something like that, but it really depends on your subject and it depends on your situation. The lower the light that you have, the higher the ISO is going to have to be, and you're going to have to just crank it up a little bit to get that high shutter speed. So I definitely suggest, if at all possible, to go out in bright sunlight for this kind of photography. Bright sunlight means that it'll be really easy for you to get that high shutter speed, a lower ISO, higher quality image, and you're more likely to capture your subject not moving, no blur, and yeah. So if that isn't possible, I suggest maybe bringing along a little handheld light. I have one that I bought off of Amazon. It was Ulanzi. It's very cheap. It's fantastic. You can dim it, make it brighter, lower in intensity, and it makes it really easy just to shine some light on your subject. I prefer a constant light to a flash because you can see the lighting and the effect on your subject right while you're there, instead of waiting for the flash to happen and then having to maybe go back and correct. So lighting is very important. You want bright light and your shutter speed to be high. Now, it is also very important for your aperture to be correct. So the closer that you zoom into an image, the more the depth of field is going to be pronounced, and the more important it is for you to have a high enough setting for your aperture. So I will go up to, I will often start at f8, and then I will go up from there. And when you're taking pictures of flowers or insects or even just small animals, whatever it is you're taking a picture of, if you are zoomed in and you have a very close-up shot, it is important to know that whatever you think is appropriate for the depth of field, make it even higher. Make your depth of field deeper. It's going to be that you're going to look at your images and you're going to be like, oh rats, you know, the one eye is in focus, the other eye is slightly out of focus. It's really hard to tell on the back of the camera when that is going to happen. But trust me, like, just make it a little bit higher, make it a little bit higher, and then when you're editing in your post-production, you can choose the one that is best for you. And if you only have one shot at it, err on the side of a little bit higher. So the higher the number in your aperture, the deeper the field of focus is going to be for you, and that's important with these types of images. Now I'm talking about high ISO and fast shutter speed and a high aperture number. It's very important. This is going to help you, okay? So it's not that it has to be a certain number in this category that I'm just about to talk about. Megapixels, okay? The higher the number of megapixels in your camera, the more detail you're going to get in these images and the better the result you're going to have at the end. So megapixels in this case do actually matter. So this is my camera. This is my Sony A992. I love this camera, and we're talking 42 megapixels, okay? You can do this with lower megapixels. I have taken awesome close-up shots that I'm really happy with the step-down camera that I had that was 20 megapixels, okay? So it doesn't mean that if you have a lower megapixel camera that you can't do this type of photography. It just means that as you get up there with the megapixels, you're going to see more detail because of this next thing that I'm going to tell you about. When I take these images, I don't always worry about filling the frame with my subject. I want to fill it as much as possible, but I know that when I get into post-production, when I put all of those images onto my computer, I know I'm going to crop into the photo. And it's okay. That is absolutely okay. This is an art form and you can do whatever you need to do to create your art. So quite often my original image is quite zoomed out, and then when I have my final piece that I have finished editing and I'm ready to share with the world, you'll see that it is much, much closer up. And that's because I was able to take a sharp picture. I have a camera that has enough megapixels to capture the detail I want, that I can zoom in on that and really just crop into the part of the image that I want to have. And I love that. I love that I can do that, because when I'm out and about and I see something fabulous, I don't get scared that, you know, oh, it's too far away, I shouldn't even take the picture. Take the picture. Take the picture and see how it looks when you crop in on it later. It may work, it may not, but you didn't miss it because you didn't try. You also want to hold your camera really steady, okay? If you have a light lens hood that will get rid of any extra light, that's fine, use that. But when you take your image, as much as possible, be as steady as possible, and that will reduce the amount of blur that you have in your image. The other thing is, we talked a little bit about editing. So I talked about how I crop in. Something that I often do is if you use Photoshop, I will apply an unsharp mask. Okay, that is just one of the sharpening options that Photoshop has, and I like to do it, and I'm just going to show you some of the numbers that I will use that sort of help. I don't want to over sharpen the image because it's going to look unnatural, but a little bit of a mask on there really can help to just bring out the detail. Okay, so some more tips for when you're actually taking the image. Take lots and lots and lots of the photo that you want to capture. You never know. Don't trust the preview on the back of your camera. You can't trust it because it's not really big enough for you to see what you've captured. So take lots and lots of images. Make sure you have a nice big SD card and that you're ready to get out there and just keep shooting, okay? Use your viewfinder if at all possible. So you could look at the preview screen here, but if your camera has a viewfinder, I highly suggest that you look through it and that you use that to compose your images. It's just going to be a little bit more accurate. You're going to have a better feel for what you're taking, and it's a great tool that sometimes I think is underutilized. If you do have a moving subject, if at all possible, wait for your subject to stop moving. The more still that your camera is and the more still that your subject is, the more likely you're going to be able to capture a very sharp image with lots and lots of detail. This may mean that you have to wait and you have to be patient for just that right time. Like I said, take lots of images, so don't be afraid and wait too long and then the opportunity passes. But definitely also do your best to get the right situation and wait for the right time for that image. Focus on the most important part of your subject. So quite often, if this is an insect or if this is an animal or something alive, you're going to want to be focusing on the eyes. Okay, so make sure that you have the eyes in focus. If your subject is on an angle, make sure that you have one of the eyes in focus and you have a high enough depth of field that the other one will be in focus also. Okay, because like I said, the closer up you are, the more the depth of field is going to be important, and if your subject is on an angle, it is possible to get that nice green perfect focus indicator on the one eye, not realizing that the other one is not in focus because you don't have a high enough depth of field. If you're taking images of a flower, I often find that what you want is the center of a flower. If you have a number of plants, and this is not a rule for sure, but oftentimes the closest one to the lens is really important to me to get into focus, because if I focus on one that's, say, a little bit back and I don't realize I have another one in the foreground, unless it's meant to be a soft foreground, if it's just slightly out of focus, I am going to see that first and it's going to drive me crazy. So I don't know how you do your own focusing. I am an old school photographer, and I love to have center focus in my camera, and I like to grab my focus, push the button halfway down, and recompose. So that is the way that I do it. There's lots of other ways to focus. You can use the different modes in your camera and see if that works for you. That's what works for me. It's really important also to wait and make sure that your focus has been confirmed. You can have, in many cameras, you can have it in your settings so that your picture will not be taken unless your focus is confirmed. Or you can set it so that it's not. It depends on your situation. If this is a very quick opportunity, you're not going to get another one, you might want to just, hit the button and try and get it. You may be pleasantly surprised. If you have a little bit more time, make sure that your focus is set before you hit the trigger, and you'll be good to go. So what about drive mode? I mean, there's different modes in your camera. You can use a single shot. You can use continuous. You can have your camera taking images like, I can't even do it. I can't even make the sound as fast as cameras can take pictures these days. So again, that's up to you and what you're most comfortable with. If you are going to use continuous focus, like, or your sports mode, that kind of thing, it's fantastic. You're going to get lots of pictures, and hopefully the one in between there is going to be just the one you want. Make sure you have a big SD card, especially if you have a high megapixel camera. That SD card is going to fill up very quickly when you're taking, 10 pictures a second or even more. And so you don't want to run out before your opportunity is really captured. What do I use? I honestly, most often, 90% of the time, I will use single shot. I like that drive mode. It works for me, but that's not to say that I haven't used continuous for certain situations. Another thing just to keep in mind is that if you're using a zoom lens like mine for a macro shot, this is my 70-300 Sony G. It's not the new fancy one, but it's the older one. You have to keep in mind that your focus distance is going to be farther back than it is with a macro lens. If you use a macro lens, you're going to be able to get up really close to your subject. If you use a zoom lens, you're going to have to stand farther back. I have to stand about 1 meter back from my subject with this lens. And I still prefer it over the macro. Sometimes I find that the hands-off position when you're a little bit further away from your subject makes it a little bit easier to capture it. If it's an insect, if it's an animal or whatever, sometimes being a little bit further back is very helpful because you don't scare them off. But you just have to keep that in mind, and also to know that because you're using a zoom lens and you're farther back, especially if you zoom in, you're going to have to hold that camera even more steady than if you were using a shorter focal length lens with the macro features. Okay, so everything needs to be steady. That is the summary of this video. Is what you're looking for is you're trying to get a sharp image, okay? Because then you're going to be getting all the detail. Nothing is going to be blurry. The hairs on the bee are going to be sharp. The eyes, the light reflecting in the squirrel's eyes are going to be sharp, and all the details are going to be there. So, high megapixel camera, very fast shutter speed, high ISO. Don't be afraid of it. Experiment, see what works, and at some point, if you go too high, it's actually going to destroy the quality of your image, and then you're going to be going backwards. So experiment and see with your camera how high you can go with the ISO. Get lots of light. Use a high number f-stop for your aperture to make sure that you get a high enough depth of field, and go. Take lots of pictures and enjoy it. This is a fantastic hobby, macro images. I love them, and it's so much fun. Maybe my next video I can go out and I will show you what I've been talking about, and I hope you've enjoyed the pictures that I've shown you today. If you haven't subscribed, guys, I would love it if you would, and I hope that you're doing well, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay? Bye.